All right, today we're going to be talking about slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form of a line. Slope-intercept form of a line. A line. Or, no. The equation of a line that is in slope-intercept form the equation of a line that is in slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. The equation of a line that is in slope-intercept form looks like y equals mx plus b. The y is always on the left-hand side of the equal sign by itself. So let's write that down. All right, this y, always on left. By itself. By its, ooh, forgot how to spell self. By itself. The m, this value right here, is the slope. Okay, this value is the slope of the line. Whatever value is in between the equal sign and the letter x is the slope of the line. Okay? The x, that's always, we're going to say always next to the equal sign. The y is always on the left of the equal sign. The x is always on the right of the equal sign. And there's a value in between the equal sign and the x, and that's the slope. Now, this value that sits out here, the plus b, or whatever is sitting here, let's say whatever is here is the y-intercept. And that is where the line touches the y-axis. So when you break all of this down, what you've really got is the letter Y on the left and an equal sign. And then whatever's between the equal sign and the x is the slope of the line. Whatever's after the x or to the right of the x in this position, whatever's sitting to the right of the x is the y-intercept, which is where the line touches the y-axis. This equation is called slope-intercept form because when the line or equation is in this form, you are given the slope and you are given the y-intercept. All right, does that make any sense? Does anybody have any questions? So, if you are asked to find the slope and y-intercept. If you're given y equals 4x plus 2, the slope what would the slope of this line be? 4, very good. And what would the y-intercept be? 2, good. Whatever's between the equal sign and the x, that's your slope. Whatever's to the right of the x by itself, that is your y-intercept. So if you're given that y is equal to negative 5x minus 3, what is the slope? Negative 5. And what is the y-intercept? Whatever's after the x, to the right of the x, is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is negative 3. Y equals negative x plus 7. Okay, again, whatever is in here is the slope. Between the equal sign and the x is the slope. So in this case, what is the slope? What does that negative represent? Very good. This negative right here represents a negative 1. And what is the y-intercept? Positive 7, good. What if y is equal to negative 2x? What is the slope of that line? What is the slope of that line? Negative 2. And what is the y-intercept of that line? Very good, it's 0. There's nothing out here, is there? There's nothing to the right of the x. So your y-intercept is at 0. if y equals 1/2 x minus 2/3, in this case, what is the slope? 1/2. And the y-intercept? Negative 2/3. Does anybody have any questions on finding the slope or the y-intercept? Now, back in your original notes, when we gave you, or I gave you the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Do you see how this letter M represented the slope, and this letter B represented the y-intercept? Well, in this table that we just did, the slope, these were all the M's, okay? If this is y equals mx plus b, the slope is also represented by M. The y-intercept is in the same position as the b, so the y-intercept is also referred to as the b. Okay? In the second part of your assignment, you're going to be given the slope and the y-intercept, and you're going to have to write the equation. Okay? So here, second part of the assignment is to write the equation. In slope-intercept form. With the given slope, M, and y-intercept, B. The slope is represented by the M value. The y-intercept is represented by the letter B. So if you are given, all right, let's say the M and the B. The M is the slope, the B is the y-intercept. If you're given the slope as 2 and the y-intercept as 1, and you're writing the equation now. So your equation here. It's just like the first exercises we did, but in reverse. Your equation in slope-intercept form will be y equals. Remember that your equation is y equals mx plus b. So the slope goes next to the equal sign, so the 2 goes right here. Then the letter x. And then the y-intercept, which in this case is positive 1. So that's your equation in slope-intercept form. If you're given the M as -3 and the B is -2, then your equation in slope-intercept form is y equals, the slope goes next, which is -3, then the letter x, and then the y-intercept. In this case, the y-intercept is -2. if you're given a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of -7? The equation would be that y is equal to x minus 7. Now what you have to understand is that the slope is 1. But when there's a 1 in front of a variable, it's implied that it's a 1 and you don't write it. Okay? So if you put the 1 there, it's not wrong, but on a multiple choice test or quiz, you won't see a 1 written in front of the x. Just like if the slope is 1, or let's say the slope is -1, then the y-intercept is 0. This equation would look like y equals, just the negative sign would be here, -x. And then if you remember from the last example, you don't write the +0. Nothing goes to the right of the x when the y-intercept is 0. Does anybody have any questions on how to find the slope in a y-intercept, or how to write an equation in slope y-intercept form? All right, your assignment today is going to be a handout, page 312. And I need you to do problems 7 through 21. And please do those on a separate sheet of paper so when I collect them, you don't pass in your notes.